See, you've done your homework.
Oh, we're professional, too.
Well, grievously, in its 95-year existence, the hotel has seen 7 jumpers, 4 overdoses, 5 hangings, 3 mutilations,
2 stranglings. General Manager Gerald Olin is well versed in the hotel's tragic history, dryly reciting the docket of carnage like a bookkeeper discussing his ledger.
Well, you think you're clever, don't you?
I know the game.
Well, during your investigation, did you discover the 22 natural deaths that have occurred in 1408?
Natural deaths?
Ah. Didn't find out about them because the newspapers don't print anything about them. All told, there have been 56 deaths in 1408.
56? You're shitting me.
You don't know anything. The causes of death in 1408 range from heart attack, stroke, drowning.
Drowning?
Yes, one Mr. Grady Miller drowned in his chicken soup.
That's hard to do. How did he do that?
How indeed.
That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
No. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
There's nothing to fear except God. Whatever that means to you.
Do I look like someone who cares what God thinks? Why do I say this? Because we got Holy Ghost power!
You're listening to a podcast exploring faith and fear, what scares us and what saves us. This is The Fear of God.
Hello, and welcome back to the Fear of God podcast. I love this podcast. I hope you do too. Talking to you right now is Nathan Rouse, one of your co-hosts on this podcast. And again, this is the Fear of God. Here at the Fear of God, we find the holy and the horrific at the intersection of faith and fear, dissecting what scares us to find out what saves us. So again, this is Nathan. This is the Fear of God. We are tracking right along with our overarching series for 2019, that of hashtag 19, zooming in on some of the works of Mr. Stephen King. Some call him Uncle Stevie, Uncle Stephen King. We typically do what we call quarterly Kings, where every 25 episodes or so we feature landmark works from Stephen King. Right now we are this year dialing in on some of the smaller works. So last week we did Creepshow. The week before that we did the one and only Silver Bullet, which we had a lot of fun with. This week we are discussing the movie 1408. Typically with me is fellow co-host Reed Lackey, just all around amazing fella. He did say something about needing to go see Nick Fury about a hotel room, which is just really weird. I don't know. I guess post Endgame, Nick just sort of like dials back a little bit on the espionage stuff and decides, just to buy a hotel and become sort of the hotel manager. I don't know, but he'll be back around in a moment. While he's picking up that hotel room key or checking in, whatever it is you do at a hotel. I did want to encourage you, if you have been around for a little while, I know some of you are new right now. I know you are, and you haven't done this yet. We would highly request. Can you highly request a thing? Sure you can. You can highly request a thing, but that implies number of times you request a thing. I would just like to impassionately request. Okay. So the way in which I am requesting you do this is with passion. Okay. To go to iTunes, leave a rating. It's really bad when Reed leaves for a little while because I just don't know what I'm saying. Hopefully he'll be back soon. But please go leave a rating. Please go leave a review. And honestly, you know what? Those things are great and we really love and appreciate them. But also, if you enjoy what we do here at the Fear of God, share it with somebody. We are often on here referencing recommendations we have, and those are podcasts, those are books, movies, all that sort of stuff. If you have fellow pod folk you talk to who are into podcasts, let them know, hey, there's these weirdo dudes who cover horror movies from a very specific sort of niche angle. Share that with them. Let them know we're out here. It's a lot of fun. And hey, Reed, you're back. So
I have arrived.
You have arrived. Were you able to check in okay?
Yes, it was checking out that was the problem. It feels to me like I have been through a tremendous ordeal. It was just really strange. I mean,
was surfing involved?
No, I couldn't surf.
No?
So it was actually, but I mean, 1 minute things were hot, the next minute things were cold, the next minute things were upside down, and then the minute after that, I was like climbing out on the ledge. I mean, it was. I don't know. It was a very surreal experience. Yeah. The problem was that I had ordered some pizza from a place down the street, and it was actually called Wacky Mushroom Pizza, and I think something was really weird about the mushrooms that they put on the pizza.
The mushrooms, would you?
Normally I don't have mushrooms on my pizza, and I almost picked them off, but I thought, you know what, I'll be adventurous. I'll try this, and that did not go well. That did not.
So if you're going to go get some pizza.
Yeah.
What do you get on your pizza, Reed? What do you like on your pizza?
The pepperoni and pineapple. I'm a pineapple guy. I know people don't like I didn't realize that pineapple was such a divisive thing to have on pizza, but evidently there are some people who feel passionate that Hawaiian pizza should not be a thing. But no, I have typically pepperoni and pineapple on mine.
I am passionate about some things. Pineapple on pizza isn't really one of them, but I don't really care for it though. So but I'm not passionate about it. My kids love it.
Right.
Like when we go get pizza, they're going to get pineapple, and I'm going to just smack that slice out of their hand.
Wow. Is that how you that's how you keep your kids on the straight and narrow there, is you just let them get that close, like the cheese is dripping down, and then you just smack it out of their hands. That's wow. Do you have a favorite food, pizza food chain that you enjoy going to, or is it
we've got here in Charlotte who knew we were going to discuss pizza
at
the top of this? But it is. You brought it up, the Wacky Mushroom. Now we have in Charlotte a place called Hawthorne's Pizza, and my Charlotte folk represent. You know what I'm talking about. It is a local chain. There's about 3 or 4 different, or maybe 4 or 5, I don't know, different locations of it. But it is the good stuff. It's the pizza. I like it. I like it at Hawthorne's Pizza.
People can't see the hand affectation
you're
making.
They can't.
But it's quite wonderful. It's quite
wonderful. So I dig Hawthorne's. What about you, buddy?
So,
if you're gonna get pizza, where do you not like Totino's? Okay, like
I gave up Totino's a long time ago.
Okay.
No, honestly, we have a place here called Chi-Chi's Pizza that is really, really good.
Do you mean Cece's?
I do not mean Cece's Pizza.
Okay.
See, I had that.
I thought that was going to be a weird. That was going to be a weird moment we were about to have.
No, because I remember back in and I don't think that they're a national chain. I remember you walk into Cece's Pizza and you're like, welcome to Cece's.
Welcome to Cece's.
So, but there's a Chi-Chi's Pizza. It's kind of like a ritzier
So do they
place.
go, welcome to Chi-Chi's?
They don't do that. No, they don't.
Okay.
They don't resemble Mario and Luigi.
Because that'd be really weird.
Little pizza pies. Bah. So no, but there's a place. It's like a little ritzier. It's definitely higher priced, and the types of pizza that you have, are fancy names and stuff like that. Like Hawaiian pizza, for instance, is called immigrant pizza, and there's the reason that stands off on my
seems a little weird.
Well, the reason it stands out in my mind is because that's the one that I most typically order.
Right.
But the thing that I love about
Hawaiians aren't immigrants. They are.
I don't know the logic behind the thing. I don't get it.
That's really odd. Okay.
But anyway, so but the thing that I love about their pizza is that the crusts are really nice and fluffy. They're very soft, and the cheese is really thick. And they have for instance, the pineapple on their pizza is like a ring of pineapple as opposed to just the little diced cubes and stuff like that. So
now, do you
delicious.
like any sort of dipping sauces with your pizza, or are you just like?
I'm a marinara guy. I just like to have to have marinara if I'm gonna have if I'm gonna have breadsticks.
As in to dip it in, or to dip in it, or to dip it. Oh my god!
Additional marinara or garlic sauce that I can dip into. Yeah,
right.
Either or. So Yeah.
Okay, well, that's
That is-
welcome to the Fear of God,
What
everybody.
you watching, reading, and what you watching, reading, and listening to.
What you
watching,
eating.
what you eating, what you reading, listening to. Do.
Wow. So wait, are we in that segment now?
Why not? Why not? Why not just eat some Mario? I jump in, I give you pizza, and send you to the next segment. That just puts you in the place.
Double. Double.
Such tense music.
Like, isn't it weird that that's like interwoven into our DNA? Like that music, that sound cue is just like I could anywhere.
Well, it's great because, like, I mean, I guess this could count for one of my watch and read and listen to, but like my son's been playing Switch a lot, and I've been playing when I'm able to. Been playing a lot of his games with him. Well, he's really into some of the different Mario games. We've got Mario Kart, we've got Mario Party, Mario Tennis Aces, we've got Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, we've got like, oh my gosh, there's like 3 other ones that he's got or whatever. But the cool thing about that is that they've been, I don't know how many of those games you have or how many of those games you've like dove into playing, but they do some inventive things with the theme every once in a while. Like they'll play it slowed down, or they'll play it with like a jazzier version or something. Like it's pretty fun. I enjoy it when it crops up here.
Yeah, we've got Mario Kart and the Mario Party for Switch. Of course, I love Mario Kart. Anyway, so between pizza and Nintendo games, like this is already an interesting start to this episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Can I share something with you though?
Hey, did you ever play the original like Jaws on the NES?
No, we've brought this up before because it was like super hard for you. I've never had the opportunity to play it. I never.
Okay.
If I did,
well, did you play any of the like wrestling games on the N64?
Thanks for going so well. Things are going so well. I mean, listen, short-time listeners, like the bunch of new listeners.
Yeah,
that
the brand new ones.
Yeah, welcome, brand new listeners.
This is a weird podcast.
So I don't remember what episode it is, but yeah, let me just enlighten you.
Well, there's Predator
video games.
I think there's Predator and there's Jaws. I think it's on either or both of the. Maybe just on Jaws. I think it's on the Jaws episode.
Maybe. Oh man, but
go listen to the Jaws episode. It's good stuff.
Nathan
hopefully this one will be.
Hopefully, Nathan's not fun to play wrestling video games with. I'm just gonna let you know. Like, I'll just gonna throw that.
All right. So, what have you been watching, reading, and listening to? Read.
Okay. Well, actually, if you don't mind, I'm gonna share.
Oh my gosh.
Something from the listeners. Come on.
Oh yeah, we're doing that now.
Yeah. So listeners,
who you got?
Have a pinned post on their the Facebook group and the Facebook page. If you have not shared with us what you've been watching, reading, listening to, or even if you have already shared, I mean, by all means, go back and share because it's new weeks, new times. So go back and share new things that you've been listening to or watching or reading. But this comes from our Fear of God official historian. Beloved Just Watch, announcement maker. That's Steve Beckley. He says, this is kind of lengthy, but I'll breeze through it really quick. He says, I watched, the film is called Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, directed by Sergio Martino. It's on Amazon Prime streaming. This is an Italian giallo from 1972. I've been watching a number of these early mystery slashers since I'm enamored by their Italian style and locations. They were precursors to American slashers of the 80s, but they certainly had their own look and feel, very European and interesting locations, not at all shy about sex or nudity. Characters are often also laughing at the modern globalization and changes happening in 70s European society. In this one particular, a lustful alcoholic author lives in a villa with his emotionally fragile wife and his late mother's creepy black cat. A killer is on the loose, offing attractive young women around town, and he's afraid the police will suspect him. Then his attractive niece comes to visit, complicating matters. He says this story is said to be loosely inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat, and in the movie, the cat, which is named Satan, acts as a sort of telltale heart. Yeah. Creeping around, clawing and screeching at characters and their vices. In the second half of the movie, certain characters reveal ulterior motives and prey on others that they judge as unworthy of their life and treasures, intending to take it for themselves. And perhaps this is not as much fun as some of the Dario Argento giallos like Suspiria, Tenebrae, Deep Red, or Phenomena, since there are a few good characters to really get behind. And this one is more of a small-town, rural setting. But I like the symbolism of the cat. Is he a warning flag put out to either be heeded or ignored by the characters at various points on their road to ruin, or the actual devil himself? And then, as a final note, Steve says, coincidentally, Amazon Prime has 2 more direct adaptations of The Black Cat, which he hopes to get to soon. Lucio Fulci's 1981 film The Black Cat, and part of the 2-segment anthology Two Evil Eyes, in which a Black Cat portion is directed by Argento himself. Steve, first of all, thank you.
Steve, thank you. We don't
thank
pay you
very
enough,
much.
Steve.
Thank you very much for that recommendation. I wanted to just say a brief word about Italian giallo films. I am actually quite fond of them. They are hit or miss for me. He referenced a lot of Dario Argento stuff. All of the films he referenced by Argento, I think, are really strong, particularly Suspiria, Deep Red, but Tenebrae, and if I'm saying that right, Tenebrae, Phenomena, those are really, really great films. I think Steve appropriately categorized them. If you're into that sort of thing, want to see some strong influence on 80s slashers, but straight out of Italy, they're really, really interesting, usually categorized by deep, rich, saturated colors, very visually arresting and interesting, often narratively a bit more abstract, but very, very fascinating and rich films. Thank you very much for the recommendation, Steve. That was great.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cheat on my watch and read and listen to.
That sounds right.
I'm just...
You going to slap this pizza out of my hand?
Slap the pizza out of your hand? It's like I'm back playing wrestling with you. You're just like, let me go beat up Reed in the corner. Listeners, for those who have not gone back to listen to that, this was my experience playing video games with him. Like, I would be sitting there trying my hardest. Meanwhile, he's just like casually pressing a button every 3 minutes and somehow mopping the floor with my character. I will never forget sitting there. When I finally quit, I'll never forget, I'm in the corner trying desperately to break out of whatever lock hold he's got on me. And he's like, ooh, I didn't know I could do that. And then he mutters that under his breath. Meanwhile, I'm like sweating bullets trying to get my character to do something. I'm like, I'm done playing this with you. Let's go back to Mario Kart. That's the best. Okay, so for my watch and read and listening to, I just want to tag in on a couple of things because now we're at the end of most of the spring TV seasons, and so lots of things have been canceled and renewed. They've got the new lineup coming up, and so I have a couple of yay thumbs up and a couple of disappointments. So there are 2 shows that I would encourage you to check out because I like them quite a bit, but they have been canceled for this coming season, which is very disappointing. There's a legal drama called For the People that I really liked a lot. Unfortunately, it did get the axe. It was an interesting premise. It basically followed both the prosecution team and the defense team for various cases and how their lives intersect and the different challenges. And I feel like it was really, it was able to deal with some complex issues in a fascinating way. So I really liked For the People. I'm sad to see it go. Second one, I'm doing these very quickly because there's a few of them. Second one that got axed is a show that actually had several seasons, but I've not mentioned it before. It's called Life in Pieces. Have you heard about that comedy, Life in Pieces? Probably the biggest name that I knew going into the show. There's several people that I have since seen, but the biggest name going into it was Colin Hanks, Tom Hanks' son. But the concept of the show was great. Each episode featured 4 short stories. So instead of the traditional sitcom format where one story kind of encapsulates the whole 22 minutes, these were broken up into smaller segments focusing on different characters in the family for like 7 to 8 minutes at a time. And it was really fun. It was great. Like I said, they had 4 seasons, so they definitely, made their mark, but then unfortunately they got canceled this time around. Now, to the joy, I have to say, if you are, I mentioned this last week that my wife and I had started Cobra Kai Season 2. Cobra Kai Season 2 has been greenlit for a Season 3, which I'm super thrilled about because Season 2 was really great. It wasn't quite as strong as Season 1, but it was absolutely fantastic. Ending on just a gut-punching kind of storyline that really, this show has got some major chops in terms of the dramatic,
Might you say karate chops?
Oh, it's got some major karate chops. The dramatic tension it's able to build within its characters, the way it makes you sympathize and feel a lot of frustration with sometimes the same exact person that you're simultaneously rooting for them and very frustrated by them. It's really great storytelling. If you are at all a fan of the Karate Kid films, you need to see these. These are some of the best iterations of it. I will say that if you are not at all familiar with Karate Kid films, you do need to have seen them to understand and appreciate a lot of the relationships. They're not utterly dependent upon it, but the relationships mean a lot more if you have seen the films. So huge endorsement and recommendation for that one. My final one is I waited for like 3 weeks to hear this. Everybody was waiting. I heard I saw tons of pieces in like Variety and Vox and BuzzFeed and everything saying, please, please, please renew it. They've definitely earned a season 3. But the Orville did get renewed. I like to think that it's purely because of Fear of God listeners. Because
yeah.
You know, like
I thought that when I saw that announcement.
I'd like to believe that's true.
I was like, well, at least Reed will be happy.
But they have well earned their renewal. I'm super thrilled that Fox gave them another chance. So yeah, we will be getting a season 3 of the Orville. If you have not caught up with it, like I said, I think I qualified this a lot when I mentioned them before, but it is a comedy / Star Trek. It's not a spoof because it's more like a Star Trek homage, because it's not specifically making fun of Star Trek elements. There is occasionally, I would have to admit, somewhat shoehorned humor in it, but they really amped up in the second season, took a lot more dramatic risks, they toned down a lot of the humor, and were really, really delivering some fantastic just singular stories. And so I love the Orville. I'm very happy they got renewed for season 3. And that's all of the little, catch in on your TV seasons.
Yeah.
So there you
go.
go.
What's really funny is I had no idea what you were going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about a little TV.
Oh, okay.
So,
Great.
Little TV here, little TV there, little TV everywhere. So I did want to circle back on one, much like your Orville just now, though with a little bit of a more neutral position here. So I referenced, I think it was 2 weeks ago at this point, Killing Eve. So Killing Eve season 1 is fantastic, but the primary showrunner or initial showrunner, and I think creator or developer of the series, it's based on a series of books, but Phoebe Waller-Bridge did leave after a few of the first season's episodes. So there is a bit of a tonal shift. It's subtle. Regardless, season 1 is really great. And those 2 leads are fantastic. Season 2 right now has me a little bored. So I am not, this is all meant to, honestly, this is a little bit of, insecurity wrapped up in this. I didn't want people to jump then into season 2 and be like, Nathan's an idiot. Why do you recommend this? So I'm just saying I'm a little on the fence right now about season 2. So if you listener are watching this show as well, and you're like, I don't know about season 2, well, just know I'm right there with you. Still, the vibe of the show is great, and Sandra Oh is strong, and Jodie Comer is amazing. But even after the last one, my wife and I were like, yeah, that was a little boring. So it's, we'll see how the rest of the season goes. But for right now, I'm a little neutral on season 2 of Killing Eve. However, a show I am not at all neutral on, but have watched all of since our last recording, is the HBO series Barry, starring Bill Hader.
Yes.
It's in its second season, and I had people hyping it to me during season 1, but I just, for whatever reason, I don't know, full plate, whatever, didn't give it a chance. And just recently had a little time to kill. It is a 30-minute sort of show, which makes it easily digestible, and I love it. I love it. It might end up being maybe my favorite show I'm watching for the year so far.
Wow.
I honestly can't think of others that might contend with it. But, I mean, it swings very sharply between high comedy and high tragedy. If you know and or like Bill Hader at all, he's fantastic in it, in a very dramatic role, more or less. It's just, man, it's really great. They've got a single episode in season 2 called, I can't remember the title of the episode, but it's episode 5 sequentially. I was texting you about this individually or off pod, and like, it's amazing. It's very different. You asked me at the time about Two Storms with Hill House. It's very different, but is one of the most singular quality episodes of a TV show I've seen in a long time. It's a really great show. It's easily digestible. The way I've tried to articulate it to someone is, it's like, think of Breaking Bad with more comedy, and if Walter White actually tried to get out of what he's doing,
instead
is
of
too good at it.
Yeah.
Like the Hader's character is kind of a hitman for hire, and so the concept is he's a hitman, but falls in because one of his marks is this LA-based guy in an acting troupe, and so he gets involved in this acting troupe and really plugs in and gets passionate about it, while also trying to extricate himself from his hitman life and failing at both. And so
Wow.
it's, yeah, and it's not afraid to kind of go dark in places. Anyway, it's a really great show. If you aren't watching Barry, I would highly recommend it. There's not a whole lot out there, so it's not like you've got a ton of seasons or whatever to catch up on. But that's what I've been watching, Reed.
All right. I have 2 comments. First
Yeah,
of all,
please.
Barry, you've definitely sold me on. I need to check Barry out. The only way it had hit my radar before was I was super happy. I think it was either a Golden Globe or an Emmy. I can't remember what it was, but Henry Winkler won. For it. And I am a huge fan of Henry Winkler. I think he's just a wonderful human being. You have teased me before, and I've been probably rightfully teased for, like, I don't do it intentionally to, like, boost myself up or whatever, but name dropping celebrities that I've met. The reason that I'm mentioning Henry Winkler is because, hands down, of all of the different, accidental and coincidental celebrity sightings I've had, Henry Winkler is hands down the nicest of any of those individuals that I've ever met. He's super generous with his fans. And
what's great about the show is he's the acting coach. Of this adult theater troupe, and he has his own acting studio with all of these theatrical posters all over the wall of productions he's been in.
Okay.
But Reed, it's fake posters, and it's his character's name is Gene Cusano. And so, like, for instance, one of the posters is Gene Cusano is 12 Angry Men. It's stuff like that where it's like he's, but they never acknowledge it. It's
awesome.
It's just the background is like his name on all these theatrical posters of him staging productions for himself and stuff.
Gene Cusano is 12 Angry Men.
Yeah, it's great. But you talk about Henry Winkler. I didn't know I'd go this deep on it, but there's I don't know the actor's name, but there's a character in the show whose shorthand name is NoHo Hank, but it stands for North Hollywood. But he's this Chechen gangster. But the actor playing him plays him as this, like, kind of prim and proper, gangster. But his line deliveries are hysterical. I was even watching a behind the scenes where Bill Hader was talking about how he can't look at him when he's in a scene with him because his line deliveries are so strong. And it shows a shot of Hader's character training these Chechen soldiers, or actually just thugs, on armament use.
Okay.
And NoHo Hank is in front of him yelling at them. Well, Bill Hader, the actor in the scene, is looking down. And it's because he just can't, like, engage with him physically because he'd break up. Anyway,
so
it is a great show. It's a great show.
That's awesome. Well, my second comment, which is a bit of a pivot, is speaking of Bill Hader, and perhaps as an appropriate segue
Let
out
me
of
guess,
this.
have you met him too?
No. Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Don't be jealous of all my people. Don't be jealous of all my stuff.
I'm really not. You just talk about it all the time.
Wow. So no, I have.
You're
not,
like, speaking of Sandra Oh and Killing Eve. When I met her, she was just the bee's knees.
I had her over for dinner, and blah blah blah. No, just kidding. So, but no, we need to talk about it because this is also ties into #19. So the new It trailer, starring Bill Hader.
Good for you.
Yes. So that was what made me think of that. And have you seen? They're great. Have you seen some of the behind the scenes shots of the set and Bill Hader making Skarsgård, the guy playing Pennywise,
right.
making him laugh? It is just the best
in costume.
thing. Yes, he's in full
yeah.
costume, but Bill Hader is just cracking him up with whatever it is they're talking about. It's great. It's
Hader's
really great.
amazing. He's a truly talented dude.
But
the It trailer is intense.
Oh my gosh. What I love about it is structurally as a trailer, it's really pretty bold and I think very effective. They essentially give you one major scene. They have a couple of clips at the end of it, but they give you kind of an extended scene.
Yeah, for that reason alone.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. That's the problem with some of the trailers is they only show you fragments of clips of things, and that's all they give you. So they don't give you any sort of taste of the tone or the type of story that you're trying to see. Some of the best ones do manage to do that. effectively despite those restraints. But this one's great because of the 2-minute trailer, probably a minute and a half of it is just this one scene that you're watching, and it is, it's great. I love the shot where, go watch the trailer, but I love the shot where the woman is talking and she's like, nothing ever really dies, and then just freezes there.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah,
the trailer
lets
lets it freeze for like 10 seconds or something. Oh, man, it's great. Yeah,
I would
it's really,
totally
really
be down if they do. I mean, certainly they wouldn't do this on every screening, but if they did some limited screenings where you could go actually do both films back to back, that would be pretty fun.
That would be really great. So I'm very, very excited for It Chapter 2. We'll see how that plays out. And I mean, like, gosh, Bill Hader, Jessica Chastain, you got James McAvoy, like this. I mean, I'm so excited for this. It's going to be, I'm hoping, very, very hopeful that it is going to be really, really great.
Well, that's been another installment of What Are You Watching? What are you reading? What are you listening to? What are you watching?
It was good.
What are you reading?
It's good. It sounds like you're trying to be a busted robot. What are you watching?
Nope, just a Mario, bro.
Nope, there you go.
All
Mario,
right,
bro.
Reed. So we are jumping back into Old 19, 30 minutes into this episode. Goodness gracious. Wow, I did not anticipate that.
You ready to check in?
Today, well, stay scared, brother. We'll get there. Today we are talking about 1408, starring Samuel L. Jackson and John Cusack. This is from, I don't have this in front of me. Is it what, like 07, 08?
2007. Yeah, 2007.
Okay. Look at there. That was my first guess. I just guessed it.
Look at that.
I mean, I knew that. Yeah, so I can't remember. Where does this text originally appear, Reed?
So it's fascinating. So there's a little bit of a history. I'll make it brief. King originally sort of submitted the first few pages of the manuscript just as part of On Writing, as an example for the readers of that book, of his book On Writing, for how to edit drafts. And so he was so fascinated by it that he was like, I'm going to expand this out into a broader story. Well, its first life was there was an audio collection of 3 stories that were all read by Stephen King, and it was called Blood and Smoke. The sort of connective tissue of the 3 stories, the 3 stories on it, and they were first released as audiobook presentations. They weren't published first. The first of the stories was called Lunch at the Gotham Cafe. The second one was called In the Death Room, and the third was called 1408. And the connective tissue for all of them is that they all involved, in some way or another, smoking. Either the character smoked or was trying to quit smoking or something like that. And so you can see, because it's not a huge element of the film, certainly not as huge as it is in the story, but Mike Enslin's cigarette that he keeps behind his ear, and that whole thing was a big part of the story. So that was the first iteration of it. You can now find 1408 is as part of the Everything's Eventual collection.
Okay.
So
that's a great collection.
Oh, it really is. Stay tuned next week, everybody. Yes, it is. It's very, very good. But I do like this story quite a bit. What's interesting to me, well, I'm going to say a few things briefly, but I want to hear your, I don't know if this was your first or second viewing. I don't know your history with this film, or if you've read the story or anything like that. What's interesting to me is that the film, I think, is a very effective adaptation, and it's a very impressive adaptation. But what's interesting is that the story itself, the much more interesting part of the story is the conversation between Enslin and Olin. And in the film, I think rightfully so, because of the way the film plays out, that scene still happens, obviously, and it's still an interesting scene, but they pivot away from that into more of what takes place inside the room. In the story, you get everything that happens in the room, but it is actually like the last third of the story. And the bulk of the story is the conversation between Enslin and Olin, the manager of this hotel.
Right.
And it's really, it's a really great short story, but honestly, it's fascinating to me how this came to be an adaptation, because, like I said, the most interesting part of the story is the conversation between Olin and Enslin, and they chose to pivot to more of what happens in the room, and I think, again, effectively so for the film adaptation. Was this your second time seeing it? Was this your first time?
It was my second time seeing it. I saw it. I did not see it in the theater.
Okay.
No, I did not see it in the theater. I saw it on video, and then I read the short after it. I did not
Gotcha.
remember the distinctions between the two. I did remember liking the short. Liking the text more.
Gotcha.
Yeah. How
The
far do you want to go down?
Well, the text is pretty interesting. Let me identify a few of the distinctions, and then we can talk about the film for the remainder of it. So the primary major distinction in the conversation, and here's where it kind of gets tricky. The conversation between Olin and Inslin occurs in the film, and most of the major plot beats that are produced in that conversation are present in the film, but it's very abbreviated. In the story, they go back and forth a lot about like philosophy. They go back and forth a lot about just like the stakes of what's about to happen as Inslin enters the room. One of the things that I find really compelling about the story version of their conversation in the film, they basically give a little bit of passing lip service to it. There's one point at which, I forget the exact line, but Mike Inslin, played by John Cusack, basically says, ghosts and ghoulies and, two-headed beasties, they're not real, And then Samuel L. Jackson, Olin, the manager of this hotel, comes back to him and says, well, that may be true, but that's not what's in 1408. And in the short story, that whole conversation is fascinating, because Olin, the character in the short story, that's his primary concern for Mike Inslin's character, is that Mike Inslin thinks he's dealing with a ghost, when he's like, no, whatever is in that room is not a ghost. It's not a poltergeist. It's a something else. And the unpacking of that just fascinated me. We should probably briefly give just the overarching premise. Mike Inslin, the character played by John Cusack in the film, is a writer. He wanted to write serious and dramatic fiction, but unfortunately somehow got relegated to basically touring supposedly haunted locations throughout America and then writing about them. 10 haunted houses, 10 haunted graveyards, 10, all these different things, these spooky places. Well, in his research, in the film, there's a very specific way that he comes in contact with this information. In the book, in the story, he just comes across it in his research. He finds out about this room, 1408, and when he tries to stay there, the hotel room. Yeah, a hotel room. And the hotel manager, Olin, tries very, very hard to keep him out of that room. And again, getting back to the story, I just found it fascinating when Olin is breaking down all of the history. This is, again, talking about the story. When he's breaking down all the history of, like, here have been the deaths, here have been the natural deaths, here's what happened to this person. He goes into greater detail about, he's like, yeah, we do a turn-down service for 1408 once a month for about 10 minutes at a time. And he said, even then, like, one of our assistants, I don't know what they're called, housemaids? I don't know what they're called. I'm blanking on what they would be called, but the custodial staff, one of them like went blind in the middle of the room, and her sight restored after she got out of the room. But it's just fascinating the way that they broke down all of the different malevolent things that have happened to people who have spent any degree of extended time in 1408. That is a great moment in the movie that's, I'm sure, probably lifted directly from that scene where Olin is trying to dissuade him, and Cusack is rattling off the deaths, and Olin's like, well, clearly you've done your research, and I think maybe the number Inslin throws out is 12. I think like 12 people have died in there, and Olin says, well, actually it's more like 50 or 60. I don't remember the exact number. Yeah.
And it's a really great moment because Inslin's clearly thrown by this information. He's like, well, most of these did appear as natural deaths, but were in fact, kind of malevolently inspired. Yeah.
And that's another thing that I love about this film is the John Cusack's performance just in general is really, really strong. You mentioned his reaction to the thing. I think I've always liked Cusack as an actor. I've never found anything really negative or bad to say about him, but I think this might be my favorite of his performances. I know Blake is going to kill me for not saying Grosse Pointe Blank, but sorry, this is my favorite of John Cusack's performances. And I feel like the layers and the levels that he gives to this particular piece, I don't know. I'm sure other actors would have been able to provide their own flavor to the overall thing, but I just love what he brings to it, because he brings a combination of charm and bitterness to everything. He brings this apathy, yet somehow this, sort of underbelly of compassion that exists. Like, I love the scene. I guess this could be pivoting into likes, dislikes, which certainly if you have some, jump in at any point. But like, I love the scene at the book signing where he's there, and then this person comes up and they're talking about his first book, and I feel like Cusack delivers such a great balance between, I badly want this person to just leave and stop talking to me about this, and also kind of you get an echo that he's remembering perhaps what might have been, or the path that he really wishes he could have gone down instead of going down the stay scared path. So I'm just really impressed with him in this film. I feel like he delivers a full commitment to the performance, and I really like him quite a bit in this movie.
So on the shiver scale, you would award this movie about 10 skulls, huh?
I don't know if I'd go all 10, but I'd rank it rather high. Oh,
well, it's what?
Well, no, you first.
Yeah, no, you got excited. Go for it.
No, I didn't get excited. I get a little nervous. So, in a moment, you and I are going to have to talk about the ending. I need to know very specifically what ending you saw for this film, because there's like four of them out there. Yeah, because there's like four of them out there. I'm not joking. There's like four of them out there.
Well, now I can't. Now I don't remember what my ending was.
Because, well, let me tell you my ending, and then you tell me if this was the same one. Because there are 4 different ones. It's kind of crazy. There are like 4 different ones, and depending on like if you stream it, if you see the director's cut, like.
I mean, I rented it on iTunes, so that's
okay. I saw it on a DVD copy I borrowed from the library.
Let me guess, it was black and white.
No, I did not watch it in black and white. But the ending that I have is he successfully makes it out of the room. That's point 1. Mm-hmm. And then as he's going through his things with his, estranged wife back in the room, then they stumble upon a tape recorder. Is that ringing a bell? Or did you see it?
I'm having a hard time remembering my ending.
Okay, well, maybe it won't matter.
Keep going. I don't know.
Because, so basically he stumbles across the tape recorder that he had with him in the room when he was going through everything. That's part of his process, is that while he's in these haunted locations, he records a lot on a little micro tape recorder. Right. Well, he stumbles across it, begins playing it. He hears his own voice, but then coming through the tape recorder is the voice of his deceased daughter that he can hear. And his wife also hears it, registers it. They both have a moment registering that their daughter was actually there and actually present, and that fills them obviously with a flood of emotions, and that's how the film ends.
So in your version, he survives.
Yeah, in my version, he lives. He survives it.
Have you seen other versions?
Coincidentally, I've actually tried to seek out other versions and have not.
You didn't try too hard. I'm just kidding.
Well, but
because I until you asked this a moment ago, I had no idea there were multiple endings to this. So I'm glad you brought this up on the front end.
I know. But no, in mine,
oh, there's a whole funeral in mine.
Oh, for real? Wow.
Like he does not survive. And in fact, Samuel L. Jackson attends the funeral, gets in the car, and sees in the rearview mirror like a charred version of him.
Oh my gosh!
And it ends with a shot of the sort of torched room and him as a ghost smoking. And then the daughter appears. No, I don't know if the daughter appears. He hears her, and he disappears walking towards her. I can't remember if she actually physically appears in the ghost form or if it's just an audio cue. But no, I don't.
Wow.
No, I had no clue that there were multiple, much less 4.
Yeah, there are 4 different ones. I think in 2 of them he survives, and 2 of them he does not. The version that remind
me, what's the book? It's been forever since
in the
I've
story
read it.
He survives.
Oh.
Yeah, in the story he survives. He makes it out. And in the story now I'm struggling to remember if he's even married at all. What I know definitively he does not have a deceased daughter in the story. That's not an element of the story at all. And so in the story, I think it's a brother that has died for something. But but not unrelated to David.
So I feel the need to jump in here. Riri.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I will not go to the mat on this. In other words, I'm not going to get like emotionally invested in this, but I think this movie sucks.
Really? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I remember having a neutral feeling about it when I first watched it years ago.
Okay.
I remember then reading the text and appreciating the text and be like, this is pure recollection. But I remember thinking, I like this better than the movie. Knowing we were doing it or, covering it, I was like, okay, well, let me see.
Sure.
I can't really remember what I might have been neutral on. I was bored to death.
Really?
I did not think it was scary. I did not enjoy his performance. I think it's just noisy by the end of it. It's
interesting.
I did not find it suspenseful whatsoever. I could see a version where, yes, Cusack and Jackson spar more conversationally, far more interesting than what we get. Like I was surprised at how strong my negative feelings were in this watching.
I was
like, I could turn this off.
Interesting. We rarely have this moment.
I know, and that's why I prepped by saying I'm not going to like drop a stake in the ground on this one because it's ultimately it is what it is. But now this is a hot take, okay? So hot takes are in themselves not fully baked, right? It's meant to be like this is not a thoroughly thought through position.
Okay. All right.
I didn't care for Cusack whatsoever.
Interesting. Okay.
What I wrote down. Now, understand one of the most recent performances of the actor I'm about to name here. Cusack in this movie felt like a poor man's Nick Cage.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I was thinking of Mandy and just the wildness of Mandy and some of what Cusack goes for by late in this movie. I was like, I'm just
interesting.
I know.
That's interesting. You don't have to apologize for that.
No,
you're not letting me. Okay, so stop right here on the pod. We can have disagreements, sir. Like, come on.
I just felt bad because the more you're talking, I'm like, dadgummit, I'm about to just like.
I mean, honestly, I think it's interesting because I respond very positively to it. I do think it's interesting when people have a different response to the film. I will say that when I saw it in the theater, I responded very strongly to it, really loved it, and I will say that this recent rewatch did I don't think it held up as well as my memory of it did. I still really enjoyed it and still really enjoyed a lot of things about it, so we can talk more about those specifics, but I don't think it held up to the level that I was remembering it because it had been years since I've seen it. It's been more than a decade since I've seen it.
Sure.
And it definitely did not hold up to the heights that I had originally had it. But it did. But I definitely love this movie. So that's fascinating.
Well, I mean, it's I don't know if I was just not in the right frame of mind for it or what, but like, man, I had a ball riffing on the dumb surfboard scene. I was like,
go ahead.
This is so. It's like, I love, if anything, kudos to the editor of this film. Because, like, it is utterly and absolutely clear John Cusack doesn't know crap about surfing, right? It is utterly clear. And it's like, okay, John, we're going to show you belly flopping onto your surfboard.
Oh, my gosh.
I love John Cusack, but he's a little doughy in this, and that's okay. That's totally fine. But don't try to sell me on him as this surfer. Right?
Oh, wow.
So it's like we're just going to have him belly flopping onto his surfboard. Then there's going to be just some 4 or 5 inserts of surfer B-roll, right? Just like random surf shots. And then it's going to be a shot of John Cusack just sitting on his board wet from the ocean, right? I'm using air quotes.
Right.
He's just like wet. People are totally going to buy that he was just actually surfing. I was like,
exactly.
Come on. But I don't know. I don't know what that says about my ability to engage this movie when that's the stuff I'm coming away with. But
I get you.
So yeah, maybe here's the thing that I've come and next week we're we're going into Uncle Stevie's shorts and like to engage Stephen King's short material. Like, he's just a master of the form, which does not mean every short is this masterwork and it's
Oh, of
eminently
course not.
compelling. It just
Right.
means he's so good at the exercise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
he's
yeah.
just
Oh, yeah.
he's great at a very distilled narrative thing. And I think for this particular story, and I wish I'd gone and reread the text before even this conversation, because I did have a fondness when I did that the one time I've done it. But I just don't know that snarky writer in a haunted hotel room is that much of a stretch for his material beyond.
Right.
And that's why I say a conversation piece would have been much more interesting.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Because
yeah.
by the end of it, and this is just, I've got other stuff on here, but by the end of it, I meant what I said a minute ago. It's just noisy to me. Like him losing it at the mini fridge, I did not buy whatsoever. The postal workers in the dream state tearing up the fake post office, him busting up the room towards the end after the daughter gets Thanos snapped. Like it was just noise. And
Daughter gets Thanos snapped.
She does, yeah. It's the multiverse. It's the Stephen King multiverse, the Marvel multiverse.
Oh my gosh.
Spider-Man's coming out. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched that trailer. But the multiverse is in full effect, and Thanos snapped, and John Cusack's daughter went poof.
Oh my gosh.
And then he busted up. But the point being, like, it was just cacophonous, and it just didn't translate for me.
I gotcha. I mean, I can see that. I did have a very different response to the film, but I can see that if you've identified some criticisms that I could understand being like, oh yeah, that may not work for everybody. I was going to ask you if the post office fake out, or like if the he's out of the room fake out even remotely worked for you, or if you'd seen it before, and so I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to remember from the initial viewings. I mean, a movie like this, though, where the whole, at least the way the movie is structured, the whole movie is meant to be haunted hotel room. So naturally, you're going to be suspicious when he gets out.
Although, of course.
What's her name? Mary McCormick? I think that's
Mary McCormick. Yeah,
she's great in this.
Oh yeah, absolutely she is. It's funny because you get a big name like Samuel L. Jackson, and then I had forgotten how little he's actually in the film. He's in it very little.
And no, really, he's very little in the film. He's just like shacking up in that mini fridge. It's like, wow.
Oh, that's
no,
funny.
I didn't look up his name, but the engineer maintenance man guy, I love that actor. He's from The Wire, or at least had some prominence on the TV show The Wire, and that's a great bit. I'm not coming in there.
Yeah, I knew he was. I'll talk you through it, but I'm not.
Right.
No, he's a great character actor. I've seen him. I've never seen The Wire, but I've seen him several times before. It is funny. Almost everything that you rattled off as things that you disliked about it are things that I responded to positively. Like I even have in my notes, like I really like the commitment that he gives to moments like his freak out at the minibar.
Oh, I hated it. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's a wavelength thing, if it's a preference thing. I don't know quite what it is. Listeners, chime in the comments or on the Facebook page or whatever. Because I am curious.
I don't know. I mean,
my understanding is that at the time, at least, the general majority response to the film was positive. But again, I even had the experience watching it again that I didn't think it held up as well as I had remembered it holding up. So yeah. I'm not sure, viewers of the film now, I don't know if they would respond sort of more in the camp you've just expressed, or if they would, or if they would appreciate some of the different elements a little bit more. The other major that I had in terms of performance was the when of course he hugs his daughter, and then the daughter dissolves into being a before she's Thanos snapped, and so I had written down that I felt like it was a really committed performance from Cusack and everything. So yeah, it's just it's interesting, but
and a moment like that, I'm not even going to disagree with you. I was just so out by that point that I was
sure.
I don't
it's
care.
Late in the film. That's you've only got 20 minutes left by the time it gets to that scene. I will make one passing comment. I'm a big fan. We're dropping character actor portrayals here. His dad, that actor is Len Cariou. He is he's one of my favorite character actors, but the biggest reason I am aware of his name and everything is because he reads a lot of audiobooks, and he's got an outstanding audiobook delivery. He's got a really a robust baritone voice and a great capacity for differing line deliveries and different emotions and everything. I wish he was in this film more. He's only in it for like maybe 15 seconds, but I'm a big fan of him, so I just wanted to mention that. Well, do you want to move into some things that maybe did or didn't scare you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, I'll start if that's okay.
Yeah, no, please do.
I think the air conditioning going out, that's a nightmare to me. I'm like, I hate being hot. And when that happened, I was like, I feel you, brother. Like, that is.
Well, that's it. Oh, man,
scary,
80 degrees.
Scary
like,
town.
I can't.
You tell me I'm going to be in a scenario where I don't have climate control. I am not going to be in a good mood. That will scare me. That will deter me from the situation at hand.
Is that the extent of your list?
My wife says I only need like 2 things to be happy in life. That could go some really bad ways. You can cut that out. One is to have everything in life at eye level, like, shelving, and like I just put things at eye level. I don't like to crouch to find things. I don't like to look up to find things. And the other is climate. The other is climate control. So like, when the AC goes out, I'm like, man, this movie just took a turn.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. I mean, actually, I don't mean. Well, it's meant to be jovial, but it's
sure.
legit. I mean, the hammer wielding lady person guy, like,
right after he sees the reflection across. That's pretty jarring. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know the gender of that person, but
nobody does.
I just called them the lady person guy.
Yeah, because it looks at first glance like it might be a woman, but then you turn around and it's like, wait a second, that might be a guy. All we know is that he's coming at him with like a hammer, and that's it, or like a big bludgeon, like,
and
thing.
not like a Mjolnir kind of hammer.
No, not that. I mean, it is a bit on the nose now in retrospect, but I mean, the recurring sort of jump scare of the radio popping on. I don't know if you watched this with your headphones on or not, but I'm sure that the audio mix on that would have been very, very loud. Of course, I don't know if you're familiar with that song or how closely you paid attention to it if you're not familiar with it, but did you catch the name of that song and why it's significant to the film?
I remember familiarity with the song. Remind me what the song is.
So the song is by the Carpenters, an old like 70s band, and the song is called We've Only. Oh, well, fine, great.
We've only just begun.
That's it. That's We've Only Just Begun. And so the radio announcing to him, again, it's a bit on the nose, but the radio announcing to him over and over again, like, yeah, this is only getting started. Like, you're going to have more and more, because the lady through the telephone tells him later, you can repeat this hour if you choose, or you can take our early exit program. Like, that's basically so the significance of that song particularly, it's meant to be and I think this is intentional. I don't think it's just me putting together a thing. Like, that's intended to be the foreshadowing of, this is only getting started for him, and it could go on indefinitely. So
that's pretty on the nose.
It is. So I think
I feel like you just like really want to just be espousing greatness about this, and I'm really just the wet blanket here. No. I mean, you're a little bit of a wet blanket, but it's not. It's not. This is not the type of film, like the same way that you wouldn't go to the mat for your dislike for it. Right. My affection for it is not at a level where I'm like, "What? You didn't like this film? Why are we still friends?" Well,
it's not there.
Let's restate that. So I will go to the mat for my dislike for it. I will not go to the mat that it is objectively a terrible movie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If that makes sense. You see that distinction?
Of course.
My experience was, this sucks.
Gotcha.
But I'm open.
My experience was, how long until I can turn this dumpster fire garbage off?
That song says we're only just begun at the hour mark. I'm like, well, just end it.
Like, please make it stop. Please make it stop. Check out.
Well, that hammer lady person guy, just take him out.
Oh, my gosh.
Go swimming again, Johnny.
Oh my gosh. Where's Uncle Stevie's shorts? No, so but yeah, I mean, I do understand. I will, we'll leave it there and pivot into some thematic stuff, but honestly, listen.
No, I've got another scare. That's the woman swiping at him from the window when he's trying to get back in. It made me jump a little.
We've already talked about that.
No, we didn't. No.
The woman...
There's two different... So there's the hammer-wielding lady person guy.
Yes.
And then there's the sort of, it's not plaid, but the old-timey looking bun in her hair when he's crawling in from trying to fake jump out the window, and she's like there and she like swipes at him, but then she jumps out, her ghost
of
person.
Course. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. And that made you jump a little bit.
Just a little.
So
I was like, oh.
Of the badges that you would hand to this film, of the awards, the Nathan Rouse I've Watched a Movie Awards, the one you're going to give to this Fright Fest is, when that one lady, I jumped a little. I was like, I believe the noise you made was like, I was like, oh, like a little tweet or something. It was like... My spirit squeaked a little bit within me. That was about the extent of it. Wow. No, I get it. So, but no, listeners, chime in the comments if you've seen this film. We won't turn this into a Team Nathan, Team Reed thing unless you absolutely want to.
No, you don't. Don't do that. Do that.
Don't do that. Please don't do that.
I don't like conflict.
He's like, I wrestled with. I was sitting there for an hour trying to make myself like this movie.
right. More than an hour. It's long. But what's so funny is I had such a negative experience, and I was like, but I intentionally didn't bring that up to you because I was like, whatever, just because I wasn't. It's one thing to watch 10 hours of Stranger Things season 2 and just be like, oh my God.
Go there, huh? Yeah.
Well, I am making the distinction for listeners of the show who stuck around for 2 years. Like, that's a lot of time and energy and mental investment spent on something that you get entrenched on.
Yeah, of course.
This, it's like, I knew I was neutral going in from my first watch 10 years ago. So I'm prepped to be like, I don't know. And then my dislike factor was high, but I was trying to project where will Reed fall in this, and I didn't know because last week with Creepshow, I don't remember you tipping your hand in terms of your affection for it or not. So
no, I don't think I did.
So
well, there's that.
There's that,
listeners. But I do think there's an interesting conversation that the short story is not having, that the film is having. And it's very overt in a way that I don't think I totally love, but I do find interesting. Mike Enslin's overt, passionate dismissal of the existence of God, almost exclusively rooted in what happened to their daughter. He and his wife, now estranged, mostly estranged because their daughter was battling an illness. I don't remember if the film actually says what the illness was, but she's battling an illness that she does not win the fight, and that's a big way that the Room sort of torments him, is by using his daughter, both the image of his daughter and, in some cases, the illusory presence of his daughter against him. And so Mike has very much turned against faith, conversations of faith, expressions of faith. And it's one thing to have a character be that way. In the short story, the character simply is that way. But as I'd mentioned, in the short story, they dive into that philosophy a little bit, like Olin's character, the one Samuel L. Jackson was playing. He dives in and he's like, he says to Mike Enslin at one point, you are particularly vulnerable to 1408 because you don't believe. He said, because you don't believe, you are going to try to rationalize things that are not rational. When you don't believe in any sort of supernatural explanation, then you, as Olin would put, you don't have the appropriate kind of fear to protect you and make you run away from these supernatural or preternatural occurrences. So I found that interesting. The film dives straight into a conversation about faith. It doesn't really draw any overt conclusions that I can really hang my hat on, except for this character is struggling. He obviously, when he sees his daughter again and then he's holding her, I think it's pretty intentional. He says, please God, and says that after making a few overt statements about his lack of belief. So I do think it's interesting then when little mini Olin the version in the mini fridge, is talking to him. He says, he says that people cling to stories, even like stories of ghosts, because of this assurance of something after death. And he's talking about Mike's work at large and how he says, you basically take this away from them. You basically dissolve this hope that they have that there is something more, because your continued presence in these rooms and your continued like debunking of these haunted locations. And it just fascinated me. I will say this, it feels like the film, even to me this second time around, it feels like the film is trying to have a conversation it can't quite have. Not because it doesn't have the capacity to, but just it either loses interest or pulls back a little bit for it. I don't feel like it fully commits to the conversation it wants to have about faith and skepticism, but that was something that this viewing I couldn't dismiss.
So you said, but you made the reference that the text does not have the daughter element?
No, the text does not have the daughter element at all.
So he's just a skeptic?
Yes, he is just a skeptic.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I am naturally going to have some bias of a negative sort here when you say you don't think the movie, I don't remember how you just worded this, but
it's interested in a conversation it can't quite have.
Yeah, and I would say it's because it doesn't know it has that conversation in front of it. Like, I don't know. I thought it was about as cookie cutter a backstory. You know, it's like,
okay.
And I say that simply to say, I think you are, because you're an incisive, thoughtful individual, you're looking at the signifiers it's sending.
Sure. Well, of course.
And wanting more under the surface than I think the movie has, honestly. I
don't think that's unfair. I don't even think that's incorrect. I think I do think the film kind of comes up deficient in its ability to wrap something substantive around these ideas of skepticism and belief in a way that the short story 1408, I think, does a better job of, particularly in that conversation between Olin and Mike.
Sure.
And so, I would definitely, we'll get to our fog meter and recommendations eventually, but I would definitely say even those who are lukewarm about the film, I mean, it's a short story, so seek out Everything's Eventual. Pretty much every story in that book is great.
That is a great book.
But 1408 only takes, less than 2 hours to read, and it, I think, is very, very interesting in that aspect of digging into basically the potential vulnerabilities of skepticism, that because you're so opposed to accepting a belief or a possibility of supernatural intervention or of supernatural presence of things, that you therefore kind of become victim of, or leave yourself more vulnerable to those sort of inexplicable, predatory, malevolent things. And I just find that interesting. I will admit that I kind of like the way you put it. The film may not even know directly that is sort of on its doorstep, so doesn't dig into it the way it possibly could have otherwise. I do think it shows up enough that it can't be dismissed. Like, Mike Ainsland says it directly to Olin before he checks into the room. Then Olin brings it back up when he's got his little mini version there. And then they have that flashback where after his daughter dies, he specifically says, we should have, because his daughter asks him, am I going to go to heaven? Do you really believe that, Daddy? And he says, yes, I do. And then he gets mad at his wife and says we should have pushed her to fight harder instead of filling her head with stories of heaven and all this other thing. So it's like it's there so much that I can't dismiss it, but I also don't disagree with you that I don't feel like the film is fully aware of what it has in depth enough to have a conversation about that, or to say anything truly substantive about it.
Well, I mean, so two thoughts. One, you reference the Olin conversations, and you didn't explicitly state this. I'm extrapolating, giving the movie credit for them, but I would say odds are high, and I don't have the text in front of me. It's been forever since I've read it. I think odds are high. A good bit of that is just straight out of the text. So
a lot of it, yeah.
Right. So it's hard to credit the movie for its usage because it's usage versus interpretation, right? It's usage versus conclusion.
Yeah, right.
And I would say maybe even more now. It was news to me in this conversation that there are 4 different endings.
Oh,
but
sure.
I think that says something about knowing what you have. You know what I mean?
Right,
versus just being inventive and be like, oh, let's do 4 different endings and we like all these different, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
How can you have thematic consistency when, and again, the nature of there being 4 different ones was new to me. So I'm not stating that there can't be thematic consistency in an exercise like that. I am saying when there's that many, it begs the question of like, well, it does kind of make sense that it would feel a little disjointed thematically when when it feels like you're just doing an exercise.
And I mean, I don't know this for point of fact, but I do think the reason there are so many endings is due to repeated like poor screenings. Well, not poor screenings, because generally the film was responded to positively, but generally poor reactions to the director's cut ending, which is the version that you saw. The one where he basically doesn't survive, there's a whole funeral, all of that sort of stuff. I had read about that ending, and I think at the time, screening audiences were rooting for John Cusack too much, and they didn't want him to not survive The Room. So it may have been studio involvement, it may have been reactionary to different screenings, but either way, your point is well taken that there's a kind of a lack of vision. There's a lack of conclusion.
Yeah. Yes.
That you're interested. Let's give it the benefit of the doubt, possibly that maybe it is interested in that, but doesn't know how to push that across the finish line into an actual conclusion.
Right.
And I think that's I do find it interesting, and I don't know how much or little we'll talk about this, but I do find the idea that is sourced exclusively in the story, and I think teased out and, as we've already said, not really landed in the film, of this idea of the skeptic brings a power of rationality to certain situations in which people who have such widespread belief in supernatural possibilities might be left just overtly out of their minds. So the skeptic brings a decisive voice, literally, of reason to the conversation. But I find it interesting that the other way to look at that is, well, yeah, but if there really are supernatural forces, you are one of the most vulnerable ones out there because you don't believe in them. And again, I don't even know that I myself have a tremendous conclusion about that, although I have a handful of feelings. I just find that risk assessment interesting. That is, the power of skepticism is its ability to speak reason into a potentially, extreme situation. The danger of it, as I see it, is the inability to acknowledge or recognize when you are dealing with something beyond your capacity because you insist there must be some natural, logical thing to it, and again, I find that fascinating. I'm
with you.
All right.
I find that fascinating too.
But you don't find this movie fascinating?
Oh, not at all.
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't want to belabor it. If you have something you'd like to say, then I don't want to dismiss it. But if you're good, we could go ahead and go to. Let's go ahead and go to the fog meter.
I've about said all I know to say.
So we're going to go ahead and go to the fog meter here. We rate every film that we watch, and have kind of dipped into rating other things that way too. On a measurement based on our title, the title of our show, Fear and God, its scares and its substance. So I'll start with the fear measurement for 1408. As I said before, this has never been a film that has, given me tremendous nightmares, but I did respond to it extremely positively on a first viewing, slightly less so this time around. Even this time around, I was acknowledging whatever suspense or startles would be present in the film would be somewhat subdued by the ultimate ending of it. So I'm going to land at a 5 on the fear measurement. 5 skulls, if you will, in the film's vernacular.
I'm gonna give it a 1 for the AC.
All right. I'll give you 1 point because that AC is just horrifying.
I don't want to have no AC. That's scary to me.
Well, what would you give it for the God measurement?
A 1.
All right.
I just,
all right.
Which, it sounds like I hated this movie. I did say the movie sucks, and I recognized I used that language.
Don't pull your punch. You hated this movie.
I'm not. No, I did not. But I don't think it has anything of substance to say.
Gotcha. Well, as we've already acknowledged my feelings on it, I think that it is interested in an interesting conversation, but it doesn't have the capacity or the depth of feeling to really bring it across the finish line because of what I'm gleaming from the short story and what parts of that carry over into the film. I'm going to give it a 3 for substance. I do again think that there are some things that are there, but it's just not quite able to really drive it home. So that brings us to, on the fog meter, we give 1408 a 2.5 out of 10. That is as close to, you know what might have been lower? I would need to go back and listen to it. I think what might have been lower was Final Destination. Final Destination might have been
yeah, but we didn't
lower.
have fog then, so how do you translate? How do you carry that over?
This is hands down so far
What did you give
lowest.
it? What did you give it for God?
3.
Okay.
Yeah, a 3. So I know your answer, but I'm going to ask you first anyway. So would you recommend this film to people?
Nope. No, I would not.
No.
In fact,
Save your
if
time.
you were like, hey, I'm thinking about watching, I love John Cusack, and I love Samuel L. Jackson, and I love Stephen King, and I found this 1408 movie that all of them are associated with, I'd be like, nah, that's okay. Don't waste your time.
I'm not going to give it a wholehearted recommendation, but I would be standing there and be like, no, if you're interested in all those things, check it out. I genuinely enjoyed it. I liked it more even, going this time, even though my viewing was lessened. I think there's a part of me that still loves this movie, but it might be based more in my experience when I watched it the very first time around, which
now,
I don't know.
Granted, if they followed all of that confluence of things, and then it was like, you know what I really am dying to see in a movie is a tiny Samuel L. Jackson, then I'd be like, you know what? maybe go for it.
Tiny Samuel Jackson. Maybe go for it. You know what?
Yeah. This might be your movie then.
You know what? Just go have fun. Listeners, chime in the comments. Let us know how you felt about 1408. So,
but don't make it a team thing. Don't make it a team thing. We're all friends here.
We're all one team. We're Team Fear of God.
Right.
So no, check it
but
out.
You know what? You know what, Reed? As absolutely and utterly ambivalent as I am about, although I guess ambivalent implies neutral. Clearly I might be less than neutral. As I am about the movie 1408, you know what I'm not ambivalent about?
What?
Uncle Stevie's Shorts.
Oh, I'm so excited.
We are next week. Go ahead and get ready if you have access to these. Apologies in advance if you don't. We will synopsize them for you. But a couple of short stories we are tackling next week. 3 of them particularly. One is called Morality. One is called... where is Morality featured? Bizarre Bad Dreams?
Yes, Morality is featured in... the other 2 are in Everything's Eventual. So, ladies and gentlemen, support your local library and check out Everything's Eventual and The Bazaar of Bad Dreams. Nathan, what stories are we covering?
We're covering Morality, and then we're covering The Man in the Black Suit, and All That You Love Will Be Carried Away.
Yes.
The latter 2 are in Everything's Eventual. The former one is in Bazaar of Bad Dreams. They are all worth your time.
Yes, very, very good, very, very good. So check those out.
And that one will next week will resolve this mini 19.
Yes, it will. This will be because we're still doing the year-long series. We'll be tagging back into it, but this little mini burst of some of these shorter pieces.
If you will.
Yes,
19A, B, C, and D.
That'll resolve that, and we will see. Nathan, thank you so
Reed,
much, I guess,
you're
for
welcome.
Tolerating 1408.
That's all right.
I love it. They don't get to you're welcome. It's all right.
Yeah, it was a tolerance.
I wasn't apologizing to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Reed, for just being you and being a good conversation buddy.
You're welcome. All right, folks. We'll see you next week.
Later. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, but it is not the end of the conversation. You can continue this conversation in a variety of ways. On Twitter, @TheFearOfGod. On Instagram, @FearOfGodPodcast. You can like or follow us on Facebook or join the Fear of God Facebook discussion group. Follow Reed on Twitter @ReedLackey and Nathan @TheNathanRouse. Email us at fearofgodpodcast@gmail.com or visit morethanonelesson.com to comment on the official episode posts. And lastly, if you listen to us through iTunes, we would greatly appreciate a rating or a review. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.
Hi, everybody.